Welcome to the Alain Guillot podcast, a podcast about life, leadership, and money matters. Our guest today is John Eastwood. John is a clinical psychologist and associate professor of psychology at York University in Toronto, another fellow Canadian. John is fascinated by boredom, and to prove that point, he co-wrote a book called Out of My Skull, The Psychology of Boredom. John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
So, John, I think a lot of people would like to hear more about this subject, boredom, only because we are in the midst of a pandemic and our life have been changed. Before we had all kind of liberties and social activities, and now we are not even allowed to go to a shopping center after, let's say, 8 o'clock, at least right here in Montreal. At 8 o'clock, we are supposed to be back in our home. And this has been going on already for over a year. So many of us feel bored, and that makes your topic so relevant.
Yes, absolutely. It's been an interesting time to be a boredom researcher.
So, John, I wonder, how do you get into this field of expertise? I mean, you are fascinated by this topic, so it's not boredom that drove you towards this topic. What was it in your youth that you told yourself, I know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life? I'm going to study boredom.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've been studying boredom for about 20 years now, I guess. And, I don't think I had any grand plan to study boredom. It evolved over time. And I think it evolved from sort of two aspects of my job or my career. As you mentioned, I'm a clinical psychologist. And so I study and I work with people who are having mental health difficulties. And I was very interested to hear clients talk about, feeling blah, feeling disengaged from the world, not being able to follow through on their desires. And they sounded a bit like they were depressed, but they weren't really depressed. They didn't meet the criteria for depression. You can think in particular maybe of the stereotype of the young man living in his parents' basement who plays too much video games and hasn't really launched into his life in any satisfying way, but not bored. And so I wanted to really understand, how is boredom different from depression? Or do they overlap, or are they different? And that got me kind of curious. And that's kind of how I got into thinking about boredom from my clinical psychology hat. But I also wear a hat as a cognitive psychologist who studies the intersection between cognition and emotion. You might say that I'm very interested in the feeling of thinking. So we all know that our emotions, like anger or sadness, we all know that our emotions have feeling states associated with them, but we don't often stop to realize that thinking also has feeling states associated with it. And I'm not talking here about what we're thinking, like happy thoughts or sad thoughts, but I'm thinking about the way in which we think. So if people think in a very slow, repetitive way, regardless of the content, it can make them feel more sad. Or if they think in a very rapid, variable way, that can make them more happy. And I really think about boredom as one example of a feeling of thinking. Boredom is the feeling that's associated with an unoccupied mind. So when our mind is not being used, when our mind is not being exercised, we're not expressing our abilities, then that feels like boredom. And so my interests as a clinical psychologist and as a cognitive science researcher kind of converged on this topic of boredom about 20 years ago.
And what is the relationship of boredom and mental health? Where do you draw the line that I'm just bored and or I have some kind of clinical depression that I'm misinterpreting as boredom?
Right. Well, I would say that boredom is a normal feeling, like any other feelings that we might have. And we shouldn't pathologize our feelings, right? We wouldn't say it's bad to feel sad or it's bad to feel angry. Or now we have to learn how to interpret our feelings and regulate our feelings and act on them. So when we feel very sad, we might not cope with that feeling well, and we might turn to alcohol, or we might get into conflicts with others. So learning to respond to feelings is very important, and we need to learn how to respond adaptively to boredom. We also do know that people who struggle with different kinds of mental health problems, like depression, like addiction, like brain injury, like ADHD, do report experiencing boredom more often than others. So I would say that boredom is an experience that can often co-occur with mental illnesses, but boredom is not itself a mental illness or is not itself a problem, but that we have to learn how to respond effectively when we're experiencing any difficult emotion, and that certainly includes boredom. Boredom is a very strong feeling, it's a very uncomfortable feeling, and many people are driven to behave in unhelpful ways, unhealthy ways, because of their boredom. And that can range from things like overeating, or substance use, or risky decision making, impulsivity. So we do know that boredom can be a spur to some problems. Boredom could possibly also be a spur to some helpful things, but boredom itself doesn't cause anything or isn't good or bad. It's how we respond to it that's the key.
And isn't it the lack of social activity one of the things that drive us the most towards boredom? For example, I'm here. We're in the midst of the coronavirus, and I live by myself, right? So I have no one to have. I don't even have a dog. So I cannot even interact with a dog. While a same person, a different person in a family of five, let's say, and a dog and a parrot, they may not experience boredom as much as I do, because they have all these social interaction or mental activities. They have to respond to their mother or to their brother, or to the cat peeing in the carpet.
Yes, yes. Well, you'll have to get a pet like everyone else during COVID. This seems to be a boon, right? Everybody wants to have pets right
I have
now.
a plant.
You have a plant, right? A pet plant. So, we definitely know from research that loneliness and boredom often co-occur. And people who report being bored, they are more often by themselves or with people they don't have strong bonds or connections with. And so those two things definitely do go together. However, it is possible to be surrounded by lots of friends and still be bored. But yes, being alone, I think, will increase the likelihood that one will experience boredom.
Okay, so what are some benefits of being bored? I mean, I tell you, for me, the benefit is that I get to create more podcasts and I get to speak to more people like you. So I see that as a benefit, but this is not about me. So in general, for other people, how can they make their best out of their boredom?
Yes. Well, you mentioned earlier during COVID that we're all experiencing limitations, right? We have, so-called lockdowns or restrictions on our freedom. And let's start there, and then I'll try to then get to answering your question about the good things. So indeed, we know that when we are constrained and we have fewer opportunities for things to do, we're more likely to experience boredom. So we can't do the activities we used to do. But another phenomenon that many people are experiencing, and I don't know if this is true for you, you'll have to reflect, but sometimes it's the lack of constraint that can also lead to boredom. So before COVID, we all were jolted awake by our alarm clocks at 6 a.m. And then we had to wolf down our breakfast quickly and then rush to get the bus or the subway or the train to get to work. And we had to open our email. Then we had to rush home and get our children ready for their soccer practice or whatnot. There was never any opportunity to even stop and think what to do. It was all laid out for us. And now under COVID, we're struggling with, well, should I do the laundry first or make some toast? I don't know what to do. And so lack of constraint can also be not always so comfortable. And the key thing that's happening here is that now we have to stop and consider what it is that we do want to do. And so what I would say in response to your question is that boredom, when we're bored, we're no longer engaged in activity with the external environment. And when we're no longer engaged with the external environment, we are thrown back towards ourselves. So we're out of engagement with the world. And when you're engaged in the world, you don't even think about yourself. You just think about your activities you're doing. When you're bored, now you're back thinking about yourself. Now that's a painful place for many people. But if we can use the moment to self-reflect, if we can use the moment to pause, if we can use the moment to what one psychologist has referred to as engaging in constructive internal reflection. So if we can look inward and ask questions like, oh, hi, John, nice to see you again. Who are you? What do you care about? What are you passionate about? How do you want to express yourself in the world? Boredom can be, if we treat it just as a temporary waypoint where we momentarily pause to reflect, discover ourselves, and then based on what we learn in that self-reflection, re-engage with the world with a new understanding of who we are and our passions. That is a way that boredom can be perhaps helpful. But again, boredom is not a place to wallow or a place to stay. While you're bored, it's not good, but we just need to use it as a jumping off point.
Right. Okay. So I can understand you studying boredom from a psychological point of view, but from a physiological point of view, is there any good use out of our boredom?
Well, from a physiological point of view, I might give you a similar answer. When we are bored, part of our brain called the default mode network is more activated. And this is a part of our brain that is involved in internal self-reflection. Now, another part of the brain is activated when we're bored as well, which kind of suggests that when we're bored, we're trying to engage with the external world, but nothing is holding our attention. And so we're failing to become engaged. But if we can pause and look inward in a constructive way, then that might be a healthy thing. Now, I hesitate to say, or I want to hasten to say that I'm really speculating here because we have very little research on the physiological or the neurophysiological components of boredom. The bored brain looks like an unfocused brain. The bored brain looks like a brain that is not engaged or a brain that is kind of sleepy or non-attentive. But if we can then shift inward, that can be a helpful thing. You talked about, both of us speaking to each other here today from Canada. Well, there's a fellow Canadian, Northrop Frye, was a famous English scholar of literature, and he talked about the importance of educating our imagination. And if we have that ability to imagine, to reflect, then when the world recedes or backs away and there isn't something there to hold on to, if we can turn inward and engage in constructive reflection and we can imagine, then that might be the beginning of something good.
Wow. A lot of people are saying that technology companies, let's say like Facebook and Twitter, they are taking advantage of our boredom and they are engaging us in ways that are maybe even unhealthy. And I find myself falling victim out of this, like in between doing research for one podcast episode or another, or writing my blog post, I tend to just go and see what's going on in Twitter, and I don't know how productive that is or damaging or how helpful it is, because maybe my brain is just tired of writing the blog post that I'm writing, and I just need like a little candy, and that candy will be Twitter. So what's the role of boredom and technology?
Yeah, again, that's a great question, and one that we don't again have a ton of research on, but I can certainly share my thoughts or my informed speculations about that. You know, there was a philosopher, Paul Thiel, who talked about technology and boredom colluding, and there's a way in which I do think they work together. And let me try to unpack this idea. So boredom is the state of being mentally unengaged, and it's a painful place. It doesn't feel good. And so we want to become engaged as quickly and as easily as possible. And media, like Twitter or games on our smartphone, they offer a very quick and easy way to become engaged. So we switch on our phone and play a video game, or we watch Netflix, and in that moment we're no longer bored. But what we've done is we've treated ourselves like a passive vessel to fill with compelling experience, rather than seeing ourselves as meaning-making creatures that need to go into the world to create meaning. And my colleague James Dankirk and I, who co-authored the book out of my skull, The Psychology of Boredom, we really framed boredom as a crisis of agency. And agency refers to the ability to be autonomous, self-determining, to form an intention and then follow through on that, to imagine something and then express yourself in the world. And so boredom tells us we're not being agentic. And the ultimate lasting solution to boredom is to become agentic. But treating yourself like a passive vessel to fill with compelling experience makes you passive, not active meaning maker. And so I would say that, your image of candy is a good one, right? Because there's nothing wrong on occasion with distracting yourself with stimulation. There's nothing wrong with watching a movie. But when we are driven to these things because we can't tolerate boredom, or when we're driven to these things to escape a negative feeling, when we engage in these things too often, if we eat candy too much, it's unhealthy. Right. And so I would say that yes, it's okay to distract yourself on occasion, but for lasting solution, look for opportunities that give expression to, they flow from your creativity, your curiosity, and your passion. Look for activities that allow you to actively go into the world and create meaning. These are the activities that will ultimately help you put boredom behind you.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. One of the ways in which I express my creativity, of course, is in writing blog posts. So I get from you, or I'm making this up, that if I embrace my boredom a little bit longer, maybe I could come up with more creative ideas to write blog posts about, or engage with other people, or I don't know, let my imagination come up with a solution instead of letting Twitter and Netflix or just fill that space.
Absolutely. What I would just add to that, though, is just to remind everybody that once you start being creative, once you start having ideas, you're no longer bored, because right. Now your mind is occupied with your internal thoughts. So, it's about tolerating that moment of boredom and don't go to the immediate quick fix, and then find a way to become, as you said, creative, or to access your inner desires. Saul Bellows, the writer, he talked about boredom being the pain of unused power, right? So boredom is when we are not able to give expression to who we are.
Okay, and what do you think of, well, I still see boredom as an undesirable feeling. So yes. I don't like to feel it. And what I do occasionally is just to go out for a walk. And even though I'm not engaging mentally in anything else, just the physical activity of going for a walk and seeing people passing by, it just helps me get rid of my boredom. So I guess I'm deducting the physical activity is helps if I want to get rid of my boredom it helps with that objective.
Yes, I think so. And again, I think that's a really interesting kind of observation. And I'm not aware of any research that's tested it directly, but it definitely makes sense to me. I think physical activity helps us work off any restless energy we might have. It also helps us, I think there's just something about the idea of movement that's helpful, right? Change. So our environment now will be variable as we walk and the stimulation changes around us. And I think that when we're walking, even if we're not actively thinking about your blog post, for example, you're still maybe percolating in the back of your mind, right? Ideas can be percolating. And many people find that, you know, a time of intense focus, and then after that, a time of letting your mind wander can be very helpful for creativity. And so I think going for a walk could definitely play that role.
Right, or playing some sports or whatever. Let me ask you: Are there people who are more prone to boredom than other ones? I see people who, no matter you put them in a corner, and they seem entertained and happy with themselves, and there are other people who have the room full of gadgets and things, and they are bored out of their skull.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we definitely know that there are individual differences in how likely someone is to be bored, and some people experience boredom more often than others. And there's various personality traits that can lead to that. I'll just try to review them quickly, and if any interest you, we could follow up in more detail. So we know that people who have trouble with controlling their attention, so people who have weak attention regulation ability are more likely to be bored. We know people who are afraid of their emotions or push their emotions away or don't have good understanding of their emotions are more likely to be bored. We know people who are just very sleepy all the time, that are not energized, are more likely to be bored. We know people who are very motivated to maximize pleasure or minimize pain. Those can make you at greater risk for boredom. And finally, we know self-control is a problem. So some people are good at regulating themselves and controlling themselves, and others are weaker. And so all of these factors can lead an individual to be more bored.
And is there any difference in between gender, men or woman? I see that I see YouTube videos in which men try to engage in more life-risking activities than
That's
women.
true.
So I guess that's why one of the reasons why our lifespan is shorter than women, maybe. So it
Maybe,
does.
yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think you mentioned boredom could lead to risky behavior. So
Yes.
is there any difference in gender and our exposure to boredom?
So the story is a little complicated, but I think it's fair to say that most research suggests men experience boredom more than women. And it's probably for exactly the reasons you suggest, that men are higher on a quality called sensation seeking. And this is the tendency to seek excitement or to seek high activity level. These are the people that want to jump out of airplanes or seek thrills. And people that are high on that quality are more likely to be bored. And those qualities tend to occur a little more often in men. We also know that boredom varies across the lifespan. You know, you may be interested to know that we don't have a lot of research on boredom before the age 10, but we know from age 10 to age 16, 17, boredom goes up. And then from age 18 to midlife, it goes down.
Right.
And it reaches a low point in midlife, which is interesting because midlife is also a time when people talk about like midlife crisis,
Right.
feeling blah or feeling unhappy, but they report the lowest levels of boredom at that time. And then there's a little bit of research to say that boredom might go up a little bit again later in life.
Well, okay, so this is a super interesting research. I'm not bored anymore. John, thank you so much for writing this book. Can you tell us one more time the title of the book and where people can follow you and buy the book?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to speak with you. And I'm always excited to share my passion for boredom with others. And my colleague and I, James Dankirk, recently published a book, and it's called Out of My Skull, The Psychology of Boredom. And you can order this book directly from Harvard University Press if you wish, or you could always just go to Amazon and you can find it there as well.
I will put the links in the website, and I can guarantee the listeners that it's not a boring book, despite of the title. John, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.